The Guns on Pegs podcast is brought to you by iTap Group. Hello and welcome to the Guns on Pegs podcast. My name is George Brown. Chris Horn is here as always. Chris, how's it going?
Yeah, good. We've been out having fun for the first time in a while.
We have. It was a pretty special day, as these podcast shoot days always are. I just absolutely love getting together with all the listeners. It's brilliant.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun. I've got slightly tinged memories, I must say. Like, I got a bout of food poisoning from the East Sussex National Golf Club. There you go. I'm labelling them on air. I really, yeah. The shoot day itself was tinged with all sorts of pains.
Well, yeah, I was about to mention how lovely the 11s was. And then I thought maybe I'd better not. But I mean, the 11s was great because everybody brought their own sort of contribution. And the amusing thing is that 20 people brought a contribution and 20 people brought 20 people's worth of food. So if somebody was making sausage rolls, they brought enough sausage rolls for I've never seen so much food in one place, I don't think.
What a cracking way to do a shoot day, though, where everyone has their little bit of effort into 11s.
Yeah.
And every single bit came with a story, didn't they? The drink or the biltong or the whatever, or I've been producing this for the last couple of years and this is my latest recipe.
And you mentioned the drink, but I think we do have to make a special mention of the Order of the Garters bar, which... I mean,
appeared out of Angus's discovery.
We never cease to be amazed by the lengths that people go to sort of be part of this podcast. But, you know, spending what must have amounted to several hours in the workshop, you know, building a collapsible bar and then painting the Garters themed logo to go on the front of it and packing it in the car and driving it to Sussex and then building it for 11s. It was amazing.
It was hilarious. He reversed the car up, out popped this bar got opened up. Then obviously everyone else went to their cars and bought their special drink they'd bought for the day. So suddenly this bar became like something that couldn't go on social media for fear of the world thinking what shoot days are like. And it was absolutely crazy. But all in the middle of a field and just one of those mega moments.
Well, and of course, when Angus said we must get the bar, I thought, he's got one of those nice ones that you just, pull out the drawer. And I could not have been more wrong. But yeah, I mean, absolutely amazing and such a fun time. And, for the first time since I've worked for Guns on Pegs, I wasn't seeing double on the first drive.
You went easy the night before, didn't you?
I did. I even got up and I got up early and had a swim before breakfast.
Did you?
Yeah.
You didn't tell me that.
I did have a terrible headache at the time, and I did have to catch some Nurofen off someone before we left the hotel. But by quite some distance, it was my least bad hangover on a Guns on Pegs related shoot day. So I don't know. Am I getting old? Possibly.
Yes, definitely. Very good. And Jamie Horner, who runs Iford Down, did a mega job of laying on a great day for us. We had lovely weather right up until
we didn't.
when we didn't, exactly. They red flagged the race, and that was it. Very good. I shall move on to introing our guest, I feel, George.
Yes, I think you should.
Our guest today is a British cartoonist, has been for over 25 years, published in 20 books, 21 books maybe. He's chairman and co-founder of the Cartoon Museum in London. He was a regular cartoonist for the Field magazine 15 years and then switched over his allegiances to country life. He's published 8 books of collected cartoons of his own, and he's illustrated a further 12 books with other authors. You're going to know some of these. Actually, if you shoot and have a downstairs loo, you've likely got a copy of one of the many books to have featured his cartoons. I'm thinking How to Be Asked Again with Rosie Nickerson, or The Imperfect Shot, or if you're a cricketing fan, Unlimited Overs with Roger Morgan Grenville, wasn't it?
Yes, it was.
And obviously, all this tells you our guest is also very clearly a keen game shot. So put down your pencil, step away from the artist's easel, and give a very warm welcome to Oliver Preston.
Hello.
How are you, Oliver?
Thank you for having me. I'm well, thank you.
It's a delight to have you with us.
I'm looking forward to being ravished on this programme.
Well, I mean, you've just had to listen to Chris and I reminiscing about a shoot day we've already had this year. Have you had much of a season so far? It's still pretty early. It's only the beginning of November.
I haven't really got going on the shoot season yet, but I have days coming up. This time of year, it's quite a busy time of year for deadlines. And normally I'd be at Spirit of Christmas in London selling my heart out, or launching a new book or something like that, or doing fairs and other things. But getting away and doing a bit of shooting is just the best. I did go out 2 weeks ago with my son, who is 19, who's called Rex, and trying to make him shoot straight and hit some partridge was good fun. Rather frustrating standing behind him, because I'd quite like to have been shooting there myself. I seem to remember.
You didn't go for the classic. Let me show you.
Yeah. All that. I did do a cartoon once of a father shooting, and the mother and the son is saying, "Dad, it's meant to be a boys' shoot," and obviously the father has taken the peg over. But it's all part of. I mean, I started shooting when I was 11, with my dad standing next door to me saying, "You can shoot that, no, you can't shoot that." It was all very miserable until they let me loose. But it was good training, I think.
Yeah. I wonder what's the switchover? What age is the switchover where it becomes very much like equal, do you think?
I think also it's a question of guns. I mean, I had a Churchill 20 bore side by side, which I shot with literally till I was about 35, I should think. 35, even 40. And then when Dad died, I took over, or when he stopped shooting, I think I took over his 12 bores. And he had a Cogsey 12 bore, which I had, and then I had to get another one, not obviously a matching pair, but one sort of close by, because I was starting to be asked to double gun days, which was very nice.
I think the switchover, it also depends on whether you have younger siblings, because I very much was sort of let loose when, not the next brother down from me, but the one after that, when he started needing to be accompanied on the peg. I was therefore deemed to be safe from that moment on.
I didn't have that problem because I had two gorgeous sisters who neither of whom shot, so I was very lucky. They went hunting instead.
Fair enough. So you got all the invites if they were knocking around.
Yeah, hopefully. Well, actually, I live down in Tetbury in the Cotswolds, and we farm down here. And when I was little, we literally went shooting with all of our friends and farming neighbours around Tetbury, and there would always be there'd be boys shoots, always a few boys shoots, and we would, we'd shoot sort of 50, 80 birds in a day, I should think, and a big lunch at the end of the day, and quite a lot. occasionally, the host sort of halting all the beaters, saying, "Can we just stop for a second because I've just been shot." But also some of the drives where the beaters were walking straight towards 14-year-old boys didn't help. But no, it was a good learning experience.
This episode of the Guns on Pegs podcast is sponsored by Just Cartridges. It's that time of year again. The pheasant season is here, and it's time to dig out the ear defenders, polish your wellies and dust off the dog. And, of course, stock up on cartridges for the season ahead. As the UK's biggest cartridge retailer, Just Cartridges stock every major cartridge brand, and since they offer next day delivery to most of the UK, there's pretty much no more convenient way to buy your cartridges. I love Just Cartridges. I know they're always going to have what I need in stock, and I love that the cartridges come to me rather than me having to make a special journey. New for the 2024-25 game season is a discount on orders of 2,000 cartridges or more. If you're like me, you'll prefer to place one big order at the start of the season just to give you that peace of mind. And so you might have seen that in previous years, when you placed an order of 1,000 or more, Just Cartridges automatically applied a discount. This year, there's an even bigger discount when you order 2,000 or more, an average saving of around 30 quid, which pretty well covers the cost of delivery. The discount is added automatically as soon as you add 2,000 cartridges to your cart, so there's no need to enter any discount code. To take advantage of the deal and secure your ammunition for the season, just head to www.justcartridges.com. Just go to www.justcartridges.com. As you might have heard us discussing, the Guns on Pegs podcast is largely fueled by booze. And so the way we like to kick them off is by having a little drink in a section called What's That You're Drinking? So, Oliver, I am going to start with you and ask, what's that you're drinking?
Well, I had a look in the drinks cupboard at home, and there was sloe gin homemade, and I thought that's a bit corny. And I found a bottle of Williamine. I don't know if you know what Williamine is, but basically...
It sounds fiery.
I've definitely heard of this.
So I'm half Swiss, and I quite like my schnapps. And Williamine is pear schnapps, and they do a bunch of different types, like Kirsch's cherry schnapps. But Williamine is what you might chuck in your coffee when you're skiing, and you're stopping at 11 o'clock in the morning, and it's quite sort of hearty. Without coffee, it's pretty strong. You could probably light a fire with it. But you don't want to drink too much of it, but I would strongly recommend it. It's got a very nice smell of pears. Cheers.
Cheers. Absolutely. There's been so many skiing memories with stuff like that. Williams, and what's the other one that the Austrians absolutely love that I just cannot stand anymore?
Jägermeister.
No, that's become a bit, although it's probably known by everyone, but I didn't realize for many years that Jägermeister is Huntmaster.
Nor did I.
All these people that don't like their hunting, they'll quite happily drink
Jägermeister. Yeah.
If you look at the Jägermeister logo, it's got a stag on it.
I don't think I've ever been compass-mentis enough to look at the bottle.
It does come out at that stage in the evening, doesn't it?
It is, and it's pretty. It's quite like some sort of medicine you take. I mean, you don't want to have to. I drank a bottle of Calvados once in a night, which wasn't a good idea.
No,
that was in the morning. Was not happy. Not happy, Ollie. I'm not sure. I don't think I'd want to drink a bottle of Williamine. It's quite hearty on a cold day's shooting up in North Wales. It'd be quite nice with snow on the ground.
Yeah, that's the link to something like that, isn't it? The weather.
Yeah, but otherwise, I think sloe gins and all the others are pretty good staple diet for mid-morning.
Yeah. George, what do you want?
Well, funny you should say they're a good staple. I have got a very special, very small bottle of sloe gin, which is one that was made specially for the podcast shoot day the other weekend, and it is the Most Noble Order of the Garter's Honey Sloe Gin, which was made for us by keen listener Avian at the Wrecking Coast Distillery in Cornwall. So he got all these little bottles made up, which were effectively our peg drawer. So on one side, it's got the Guns on Pegs podcast logo and somewhat distressingly pictures of you and me. And then on the other side, it tells you your peg number and whether you're supposed to move up or down at the end of each drive.
So yours is you were down E10.
I was 10 down. Yes.
Yeah. It's actually a very nice colour.
It is. It's a lovely colour.
It's a proper sloe gin colour.
It is, and I'm assuming that it's sweetened with honey rather than sugar. That's the honey sloe gin aspect. And it's also one of the very few sloe gins that you'll come across that tells you what its alcohol by volume is. And at 34.5, I reckon that's quite a punchy sloe gin, isn't it?
Never seen one more than 25, I don't think.
No.
All right, well, in which case, that makes us on 3 strong drinks today. Because,
oh, really?
Yeah. So I got given on our podcast shoot day by the lovely Stu Allen. I have to thank him very much for this because he's come up with a blinder here. You guys will be familiar with Old Peculiar, the Theakston's beer, right?
Yep. Yes.
Yeah, it's a lovely beer. Right.
A fine ale.
This is the spirit of Old Peculiar.
Okay.
At 40%, this is a beer spirit to be consumed in essentially the same way as you would have whiskey. And I've literally opened it a couple of moments ago and I couldn't wait, so I dived in.
Has it got a round bottom to the bottle?
Almost.
What, so you can't put it down on the table. You have to keep passing it along.
Doesn't work if you're on a podcast to yourself, is it?
So did you talk to Stu about how it's made or what it's made from? Presumably it's made from the mash.
Okay, hold on. It's so good. I'm going to give them their moment of reading it out. Distilling beer to make a spirit. Whose daft idea was that? Well, mine, actually. My family have been brewing the legendary Theakston Old Peculiar in Mazum for nearly 200 years. Why not, when we inquired of ourselves, employ the alchemy of distillation to present the legend in a new and intriguing way? So, Spirit of Old Peculiar infused with oak shavings from our own cooperage to perfectly complement its subtle hints of cherry, vanilla, and banana. Enjoy this beer, spirit, neat or nice.
So they've made beer and then they've distilled it, and that's what you end up, and then they've aged it in, or sort of fast aged it with some oak shavings. That's really interesting.
Yeah. But it's honestly, cool. It's really good. It's really good. It's like how would I describe it? It's softer than a lot of whiskies. It got a bit of beer taste to it, but like instantly reminds you as if you were drinking a whiskey. Like it just fills you with all the whiskey moments if that's what you're used to.
Yeah.
But then has this really lovely. Yeah, I'd encourage
That's
it.
Cool.
I'd never seen it before, so you'd probably have to find it online. But
I'm not wishing to be competitive, but I have just seen the back of this bottle. It says 43%. So, I might be taking it in slightly more moderation.
It's not often that I've got the weakest drink on the podcast.
No, this is the first, I think, actually. Anyway.
Well, I think we should gloss over that. So, Oliver, what we now like to do is we like to turn to our mailbox and we ask our listeners to write in. Normally, we would have something called Whose Bird Is It Anyway, which is where we try to solve dilemmas. But in a slight change from the usual program, we have a sort of double unpopular opinion. We always keep our correspondence anonymous. And this one comes from somebody I have decided to rename Ponzi, who has written, "Good afternoon. With the rising cost of running a shoot day and government legislation in certain places affecting the number of birds being released, I was thinking it's time to look at blending a traditional shoot day and a simulated one. The idea would be to run on a similar traditional format with the guns meeting in the morning for breakfast, but rather than having the first 2 drives as pheasant or partridge, have 2 simulated drives before 11s. This would reduce that nervous weight on the peg, or for a novice gun, give them experience and or time to get their eye in. After 11s, the guns could have 2 or 3 traditional drives, either stopping for lunch or shooting through. With the misty mornings we've been having presently, maybe a later start could help with this. This could also reduce the bag size from, let's say, 200 to 100, with everyone getting plenty of shooting. Loaders could be with the guns from the start, and beaters could have a later start, and the underkeeper on the darker mornings could get some other jobs done. Obviously, this would have to be done on a separate area of the estate, and some may say it would disturb the afternoon's drives, but how many times do you hear other neighbouring shoots starting before you have, and the birds still remaining in the drives later? Or the beaters could go on stop. That said, I'm a fan of a traditional day, and some purists will be throwing their rubber ducks out of the bathwater as they relax listening to this unpopular opinion on the podcast. But what with the cost of living increasing and restrictions coming in, is this a way to adapt and secure our future?
Debate.
Wow.
Oliver, you're going first.
Well, I mean, that's a bit of a bolt from the blue. I never thought about something like that. I having been to a shooting lesson back in September with my son, who I was trying to chivvy up. It's great seeing the way that they can chuck the clays around, and I think if it works, there's nothing wrong with it. I wouldn't mind.
I think it's a really nice idea. I seem to remember these things being talked about.
I think someone's doing it. I've seen this on Guns on Pegs.
Have you?
I've seen someone doing something. I can't. I shouldn't. They're going to be cursing if they're listening. Because I should be able to try and remember who it is. But someone is definitely doing this. But I'd never really thought about it like I just have, in terms of someone posing their justification and all the reasons why it might work. I thought that was very well put, if I might say, because that changed my opinion slightly to what I might have been thinking before.
I think it was around the bird flu time when people were struggling to get hold of birds that I first heard people talking about this kind of blended. Is it blended? I think it's a blended day, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think it's a really nice idea. And I think that, as either as a way of keeping costs down or as a way of making it more accessible or as a beginner's sort of day, I think it's a really, really, really good idea.
But also, surely, I mean, I think as I said earlier, when I went to boy shoots, we were shooting 50 to 80 birds a day. And now, some kids, won't be happy unless they have a 250 bird day. And actually, if you're a dad, which I am, and you're paying,
can't do that.
It gets a bit pricey. But if you had some sort of hybrid version whereby you could still enjoy the clay shooting, the live bird shooting, the the Wilhelmine out of your hip flask, or even the old peculiar version of, I think for younger kids it'd be great.
I think there's something in that because you've really Ponzi, well named, has really thought about this, getting the trigger going. And getting everyone having fired some shots is a very interesting feeling on a shoot day generally. You watch when everyone, I mean, there's, those that run really professional shoots know about the art of running a shoot day, when the big drives need to be, when it needs to all go off and how you finish and all that sort of stuff. And they know exactly where they need to take people to make sure everyone has the best day. Most shoots don't really think like that, and rightly so. But that is what happens. So the idea of getting everyone blazing away.
Yeah. If everyone can fire a slab of cartridges before 11s, everyone's going home happy, don't you?
And I think that I reckon if you asked the shooting population of this, they're going to go, no, it's not my sort of thing. I reckon if you just didn't tell them and they turned up on the day and you just said, we're doing this is what we're doing now, just embrace it. And by the way, you could say like, oh, it's free or whatever, just so they don't get annoyed. I reckon people would actually go away thinking that was great fun.
Can I take it further? I mean, if you were to, when you go shooting, a lot of it is about the killer instinct in you. So when you have a flush of pheasants or partridges that fly out over you, your killer instinct goes in and you start trying to kill as many of them as you can. But you have the same thing when you have a flurry of clay pigeons. Yeah. So if you're satiating, that's the right word, if you're making yourself happy by doing that, shooting off your slab of cartridges or whatever, it also slightly solves the problem when you've got, a 400 bird day with all the pheasants lined up at the end of the day, and everybody says, no, I don't want to take a brace home.
Yeah.
Which is crazy, I mean, when I had my 80 or 50 bird days when I was 11, 15 or 8 years old, we were all made to take them home. And actually, we were taught how to pluck them. And I used to take them back to school, and at school they would cook them for us for tea.
Wow.
That's epic.
Get that.
Can you imagine that happening?
That is, well, I shall try it on the primary school next week.
But your point about this sort of killer instinct is right, because this person points out the novice gun. So that's like those, and let's just take away the word novice for a second, because a lot of people wouldn't count themselves as novices, but a lot of people would count themselves in the bracket of shooting maybe 3 times a year. And each time they turn up going, oh my God, I've forgotten how to do this. That early morning nerves of being on the peg or whatever. If you had a couple of these drives, the hardcore shots who like absolutely love it, would get a bit out of their system, like an eager dog. When you've done a few retrieves with your eager dog, the next retrieves are the best because they listen a bit more, right? It's the same sort of thing. If you get out their system with the eager guns, and the less frequent shot gets a chance to warm up, you're going to turn up to the sort of game day part of it just fully prepped. I think it would work perfectly.
As I said, I mean, it didn't. When I've never heard of this before, and when George read it out, I mean, it didn't turn me off.
Yeah, I'm with you.
I could get it. I wouldn't. I'm not proud. I mean, if somebody wants to give me a shed load of clays, I'll have a crack at them as well.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's not, I think the thing with a lot of game shots, and we know this through various bits of data we do with Guns on Pegs, is simulated shooting is not a replacement of game shooting. And there's a bunch of reasons, and we could talk all day as to why that is. But the good thing about this is it's not trying to be a replacement. It's just trying to be a sort of sharpener for the day or whatever.
Well, I think the sharpener's a really good point as well, because especially early on in the season, that first drive of the day, I'm very much in the camp of please don't let the first bird to flush come over me.
Oh, go on. Don't be such a blouse. Grow up.
But having the opportunity to sort of get warmed up, I think would be very good for my ratio later on in the day.
A bit like hunting. Would you call it trail shooting?
Well, it is just simulated game shooting, isn't it?
Just have a quick trail before you get onto the hard stuff.
Yeah,
I think
trial shooting.
Yeah, I think it's he makes a good point. I mean, he's really thought about it. He talks about the mist as well. You know, this year's been foggy, and this would avoid a bunch of scenarios there for a load of people. The obvious one he's also thought about, which a lot of shoots just couldn't do based on size, is dealing with the geography of where you would do this so that it didn't completely destroy the drives later on. So that's a very fair point.
But you'd also have the other one when it's been an absolute stinker of a night, and it's been pouring with rain all night, wind, and basically the poor old keeper comes out in the morning, and the birds are halfway across England as he tries to get them all in the right place for the shoot. So that would be a great opportunity to do a session of clays.
Yeah,
for the first couple of drives while he goes and finds the birds that are not in Gloucestershire but in Wiltshire.
And this year, you know, the weather has been warm. You know, I don't think we've had a frost here yet in Hampshire, which we might have expected to by now in sort of normal years. And you know, just walking around the farm, the birds are absolutely everywhere. You know, they're not in the woods, they're not in the cover, they're just sort of, you know, biffing around in the fields.
They're right. Well, but also with SFI and countryside stewardship, we all have clover and birds and bees mixes and winter bird food patches, and you know, basically half of England is no longer in crop, but is actually in game food. So why would you want to be in a wood if you're a pheasant?
Yeah,
because there's free food everywhere else.
It's a good point about the changing landscape of farming and how that's going to impact shooting. Never really thought about that.
Yeah, well,
I don't think anybody dares go too deeply into it in case the powers that be cotton on.
Yeah, well, we've just gone 100%.
Really?
Here, yeah.
Wow.
Because we had a rubbish. We're very small. We've only got 100 acres, but we had a really rubbish oilseed rape crop. And you know, if they're going to give us money to do it, we'll do it.
Yeah. Oh, the justification on it makes
because they've taken all the other money away.
Yeah. So 100%, that could be translated to 100% nightmare for keeper, depending on the percentage that you've got in.
Yeah.
Just means you can drive any bit of the farm in any direction you like.
But maybe we might pick up some free birds from elsewhere. You know, you never know.
Yeah. You got some big shoots around you.
We have big shoots around us, yeah. We got the Cotswold Escarpment with all those valleys. There's some beautiful shoots down there.
No, very well, yeah.
Lovely. So we need to do the vote. I think I know which way this one's going. So are we calling this an unpopular or a popular opinion?
I think popular.
Yeah, Oliver, popular. I'm going to go with you on this. Well, okay. Between us, I'm going popular. However, I think if you surveyed shooting community, this would be unpopular. But I think this is the sort of thing that becomes popular. There you go.
Okay. Yeah.
So, and I'm with it. I'm all for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree. So a popular opinion. Good. Unanimous decision as well. I like it.
But can I also congratulate Ponzi? Very well thought through. He got all the important points in there. Well argued.
Yeah.
And eloquently said.
Yeah.
By George.
We don't give George compliments on this pod, Oliver.
Okay. Very badly said by George.
Right. So we have got another unpopular opinion.
Yeah, from someone that George has called George, who writes, "We've been doing driven shooting all wrong. The standard line of 8 to 10 guns is entirely the wrong number. We should really have either no more than 6 guns or it should be 20. And he leaves it there.
Yeah, so do you know why they're called George?
Go.
Or because it's me. This is my unpopular opinion.
It is your...
I didn't know. Okay, so you've obviously read the first bit and then thought, this is what you've been thinking for a while.
I've been cooking this up since the weekend as to what we could do for an unpopular opinion. I've been thinking about it.
But it was the first bit that drove your thought, right? Obviously.
No. I saw this one and thought they kind of fitted together nicely. So I was going to just do that. I was going to just include my unpopular opinion this time.
Right. So this is your opinion, George.
This is my opinion.
Think 6 or 20?
I'll give you a bit more detail. So obviously we did the podcast shoot day the other day where we have the 2 teams of 10 guns. So that's 20 guns, but you're sharing a peg with somebody and you do 6 shots and then swap over, which is...
The reason we do that on the podcast shoot day is just to get maximum number of people there.
Well, and to keep the cost down because it's half as expensive because there's twice as many people.
Yeah.
that format is brilliant because you've always got somebody on the peg with you. Because of the up-down thing with the way we do the numbers, you're always standing with somebody different on every drive, which makes it a really fun thing to do. Having that number of people on a shoot day sort of increases the fun, increases the banter, just generally makes it more riotous, slightly more chaotic, and creates a brilliant atmosphere. So that's why I say it should be 20. But this weekend we had a shoot at home, and it's very much the sort of shoot that you were talking about, Oliver, the sort of boys' days that you used to have, a small family affair. But we would normally stand 8 or 9 guns. But for various complicated reasons, we had a number of dropouts in the week, and we were unable to fill the spots in time. So we then had a line of 6 guns, but my future brother-in-law had to go off after 11s to taste wedding cake. So he dropped out for 2 drives and came back for the 3rd drive. So we've called it a line of 5.5 guns, was the sort of total for the day, as it were. And we shot 67, which is, a really good bag for us. And it was absolutely delightful. Having just that very kind of intimate number of people was really nice. Everybody got heaps of shooting. The keeper has done the maths and worked it out that if we'd had 9 guns, we'd have shot 110. So he was very excited by that.
I don't think it works like that.
I think you're right.
I think there was one guy who shot 67 birds and the rest missed everything.
Well, yeah. There was one.
George, would you like to comment on that?
Well, it wasn't me. But I just think that, either go small or go big and stop mucking around with 8.
Or 9.
Or 9 or 10.
Oliver, thoughts on George's opinion?
I'm slightly stumped by it. I suppose if you have 8 guns and you're shooting all day, most of the day you don't see half the guys because you never really cross their paths. And if there's only 6 of you, you make good mates and you have better banter and you get more shooting. Fair enough. 20 sounds like a lot of people to me. It reminds me, actually, there's a guy called John Hills who had a small shoot down near Taunton, and they auctioned it off for a local charity. And they met the guns at Taunton Dean service station where they'd all have breakfast. And he went down there to meet them. And there was only one guy there. And basically, they had a breakfast. He said, when are the other guys arriving? And he said, well, it was a 250 bird day, and I thought I'd buy it. And it's just me.
God.
Oh, my word.
Basically, it was only one guy, and they had to do the whole shoot for him, shooting 250 birds, as happens.
There's a challenge for the keeper.
Anyway, but I think... I don't know about your idea.
That is, we need to discuss that. That is wrong on so many levels. I mean, I understand the humor of it, but seriously, okay, I'd seriously get it if he'd said 2, him and his best mate.
Yeah.
The moment you turn up on your own, for me, that's just changed everything.
And he said, where are the other guns? He said, there aren't any other guns. It's just me.
What a prick! There you
go. Greedy. I would happily partake in your 6 bird day, and maybe your 12 bird day, but maybe not your 20 bird day.
Gun
okay.
Day.
Yeah. Sorry, okay. Gun day.
Yeah. So I totally understand why you said this, George, because I agree with you. The podcast shoot day with 20 guns in that setup, when you're doing it for that reason, it's the big get together with loads of a big group of people. That it really does work. And if you're umming and ahhing about doing it on your shoot next year for whatever reason, because you've got a lot of people that you want to invite or you want to do it with, I highly encourage you to give it a go. If you are a small, close-knit group of mates and you want that sort of day together, I can totally see why sometimes 8 or 9, I mean, if you're lucky enough to have a syndicate of 8 or 9 that's consistent, fine. But I can see how that quickly drops down to 6. Always is the way. There's always a couple of flaky ones, aren't there? And so 6, going back to Oliver's point, you then got that more intimate day with 6 of you than you would with 9 of you. The other fun thing is that you're then probably 40 plus yards apart on each peg, which,
well, this was the thing. Yeah.
you make so a bird in between you is still 20 yards away, which is fine.
Yeah.
And a bird over your neighbour's head while he's reloading is a bloody good bird.
Yeah.
And
you don't have to be polite.
Exactly. And so therefore, obviously the cost goes up massively unless you can get the shoot to decrease the size of the day. So I'm with you. I agree. I mean, I think but the thing is, I think there's a place for 6, 9, and 20.
Well, I think you're probably right. But I think the big downside to the shorter line is that so many drives are set up for a longer line. So a lot of our drives would definitely benefit from having at least one more than 6. They do squirt out the sides. You can never be quite sure which way they're going to go.
You're a partridge shoot.
Yeah.
So the opposite can be said of a lot of pheasant shoots.
No, they know exactly where they're going to go. So you really don't.
And actually,
only need
guns,
2 guns.
Yeah, you only really need about 4.
So it works on a pheasant shoot, but doesn't work on a partridge shoot.
It really does depend on the shoot, doesn't it? Because a lot of shoots, you get there. Oh no, I know people don't like it, but we are a 10-gun shoot. That basically says we got no idea where they're going. Can you please bring 10 guns?
Yeah, I think I'm fairly sure that 100 years ago 6 was the standard.
Really?
Number of guns in a line. I think so. I think when they were more kind of private affairs, I think they were shorter gun lines.
Yeah, but have you ever had a badminton sporting diary and looked at the numbers that they shot at Hall Barn back in 1912 with 6 guns? Really?
Well, this is the thing. Someone could confirm this in 3 seconds by opening up a game book, which goes back quite far.
Yeah,
I think it's been always been 8 or 9, but I'd like to know why it always was. Because it doesn't suit every shoot. So did it become the norm and everyone felt that's what they had to do?
Probably because they had 7 good friends.
Everyone has 7 good friends.
Yeah.
There's probably some sort of deep-rooted psychological science in this about humans, and actually that's why a shoot line is that long.
Well, they probably wanted to have 8 people sit round their table at dinner.
It was all driven by the size of the dining room table, yeah.
Yeah.
Right, we need some correspondence on that if anyone's actually knowledgeable on the topic.
And they probably had 8 bedrooms in the house for them to stay in.
That wasn't the norm, though.
Well, maybe if you were Blenheim, it might have been slightly different.
Yeah, true. Yeah.
You have 80. Right, okay, so we're going to have a vote on my unpopular opinion.
I think it's a really stupid idea.
Good.
It's not just unpopular, it's stupid. I think it's massively unpopular, but I understand why you said it. And actually, because I'm actually always up for a little bit of change sometimes, trying new things. I think why not? My point is, shoots shouldn't get so hung up on the number of guns due on each day.
Yeah, I think that's a good way of putting it. Yeah,
selling it accordingly.
We sell shooting scorecards in packs of 8, and I can't tell you.
Please don't change.
And I can tell you the number of people who come and say, we shoot 9. I go, well, you're going to have to buy 2 packs then, aren't you? Oh, I don't want to buy 2 packs.
Imagine how many you'd sell to people with a 20-gun team.
Yeah. Can you imagine? Rock on. I've changed my mind. George, you're a genius.
Yeah, if they're... Oh, sorry, I was going to get into a mass conversation.
Yeah, don't actually tell us the number. That's very boring.
How many you'd need to sell? You need to encourage them. If they shoot lines of 9, you need to encourage them to buy 8 packs, don't you?
Yeah, something like that.
No, 9 pack. Oh, bloody hell. Anyway, move on.
Right. So we will. We have got a McPodcast submission with a difference. For those who are comparatively new around here, the McPodcast is like a traditional McNab, but with a twist. We're looking for fur, feather, and fin, but they have to be completed on separate continents and over 3 days. Obviously making use of the Guns on Pegs podcast time machine and or private jet or helicopter. So Chris, take it away.
Dear George and Chris, I've been thoroughly enjoying the podcast submissions and they've inspired me to write one of my own. Since George is a lover of the written word, I've tried to capture the spirit of the classic hunting tales in my story. For the record, one of the 3 stories is based on a real event that a friend of mine experienced. Kind regards, Max, and that's his real name, and you'll find out why in a minute. It was the crack of dawn when I set foot on the African plains, rifle in hand, ready for the first leg of my podcast adventure. The challenge to hunt down an ostrich one of the largest and fastest birds in the world, known for its succulent steak-like meat. Tracking wasn't easy. The ostrich is quick, blending into the brush. I followed its tracks for hours, moving quietly across the savannah, adrenaline coursing through my veins. As the sun began to rise higher, casting golden hues over the horizon, I finally spotted it, a majestic bird towering over the dry grass, unaware of my presence. I had only one shot, and I needed to make it count. I steadied my rifle, taking a deep breath to calm my racing heart. The wind was in my favor, gently blowing toward me. I lined up the sights, exhaling slowly as I squeezed the trigger. The rifle cracked through the quiet morning air, and the ostrich dropped to the ground in a flurry of feathers. The first leg of the challenge was complete. Feather was in the bag. As I approached the bird, I marveled at its size. Taking down such a fast-moving and strong creature was no easy feat, but the reward was more than just meat. It was the satisfaction of a successful hunt on the African plains, the kind of experience that makes you feel deeply connected to the wild primal world around you. I took a moment to savor the victory, knowing that 2 more continents and challenges lay ahead. But for now, Africa had given me its prize. Like how into this he's getting.
I feel like you should be reading it as if you were, an ancient hunter or, an ancient professional hunter from the 20s.
With the ostrich hunt behind me, the next challenge took me to the rugged Australian outback, where wallabies bounded through the dusty brush. I was armed with a pair of Purdy's, ready for some double gunning action. Wallabies, though small, were fast, their erratic movements making them tough targets. I had to be quick and precise. Driven by the beaters, several braces of wallabies leapt across the open ground. The end of the hunt, the fur was secured, each brace a testament to sharpshooting and quick reflexes. I think we're going to come back to that one. Finn, by the way, this is all made up, except for one, just in case anyone listening's wondering. And Finn, for the final leg of the podcast challenge, I headed to the swamps of the southern US to catch catfish by hand. I'm hoping this isn't the made-up one. Wading waist deep in murky waters, I felt the cool current rush past as I groped the muddy bottom. There's a line.
It's an unfortunate phrase, isn't it?
Searching for the telltale slick scales of a catfish. The challenge was as much about patience as it was strength. Finally, my hand closed around a broad, slimy body, another unfortunate line. With a firm grip, I pulled the writhing fish from the water. The thrill of success surged through me as I held it aloft, fish complete, and the final piece of my challenge secured. By sunset, I had conquered the trifecta, fur, feather, and fin, each challenge pushing me to new limits across 3 vastly different landscapes. The podcast was complete, and I savoured the victory. Max is very keen.
Yeah.
I mean, very keen.
Right, debate which one of those 3 actually happened.
Catfish.
Yeah,
I really want it to be the catfish.
Well, I mean, it's a real thing. They call it noodling.
Oh, really?
But you don't grab them; you stick your hand in their mouth.
Really? Oh,
yeah.
Because they swim around like that.
I don't think it wasn't the wallabies.
No.
Nah.
No, he's got I think he's chosen the wrong gun.
Yeah. Can you imagine blasting a wallaby with 2 Purdy's?
Yeah. I think he's got
I
that
don't
wrong.
think so. I don't think so.
No, that's not. That's well put. I don't think that's acceptable.
No,
So
I don't. It's not acceptable. I don't think he'd be allowed to do it.
Yeah. So I'm glad we pulled that one up.
They do hunt kangaroos in Australia, though.
Do wallabies run in braces?
Do wallabies go in braces? I don't know.
It sounded all a bit like pheasant shooting, but in Australia with kangaroos.
What is the collective term for a flush of wallabies?
Well, if there were 3 of them, it might be a thrice. I don't think it would be a brace, would it?
No. I like to think it's maybe a spring of wallabies.
So I'm absolutely with you. That didn't happen, and it shouldn't. The fin, as George rightly points out, could happen, and I want that to happen. I feel like because he talked about the ostrich the most, I feel like that's the one he might have done.
Yeah. Have you had ostrich?
Yeah. My granddad had an ostrich farm.
Did he?
Yeah. In Essex.
Wow.
They all got nicked by the pikeys.
How do you steal an ostrich?
Yeah, honestly, you've got to be mad, right? You've really got to know what you're doing. You need a sock, but you need to be very accurate with your sock, and you need it on a long stick. And once you've got the sock on its head, you can do what you like. Right. But if you get kicked, and they kick backwards, not forwards.
I was trying to work out what you were going to do with the sock.
You get the sock on the head. When they kick backwards, not forwards. And if you get kicked, you're dead. Like, game over.
And do you put them in a horse box?
Yeah. You can get about 8 in a horse box. What happened to them? But ostrich meat's really nice, isn't it? Have you had it?
No, I haven't. But I've seen it on a menu.
It's really nice.
It's regular stuff.
Yeah, it's very good. I mean, it's like many game meats, and it's not a lot of fat. But so ostrich burgers were a thing for quite a long time, weren't they? But I always thought they could be quite dry. But
you see a lot of ostrich farms around.
Yeah. Well, I think there was a big push at one point, which is, I think, why my granddad ended up getting involved in it. But it's never, we don't see meat any more than you did 20 years ago.
Yeah.
I would say.
There was a line in the ostrich bit that caught my attention, which is the first leg of the challenge was complete. Feather was in the bag, and I thought he must have a fucking enormous bag.
Yeah.
But also, he's really pushed the feather point of this Muck podcast with that one, hasn't he? Yes, it's a bird, but it's got feathers. But it's not what you meant when you were talking about.
So I mean, yeah. So what he's done is he's swapped the rifle and shotgun elements over, so that you're acquiring your feathered game with a rifle and your furred game with a shotgun.
Yeah, but he's done it the wrong way round. Because if I had the choice, I just must say that this isn't my bag on either of these two things, but I would be using the purdy on the ostrich and the rifle on the wallaby.
How much lead do you have to give an ostrich?
I'd do about 50 miles an hour.
Yeah. Taking them on the run would be quite the thing.
Yeah.
Right, moving on.
Yes, well, I'm afraid we or rather I have had a bit of a ticking off from a correspondent. We've had this email in. It says, "Dear Chris and George, I was catching up on my Guns on Pegs podcasts while driving back from Bisley Shooting Ground this morning and was delighted to hear that you had featured an entry for the Muck podcast, part of the podcast. A few seconds into the segment, I confessed that I was amazed that Justin had had the same idea as me, fishing for salmon on a raft in Canada, although the wording sounded vaguely familiar. By the time Chris had got onto shooting ptarmigan on skis, never mind about the photographing of a tiger, I was delighted and disappointed in equal measure. Here was my podcast concept being read to the Guns on Pegs podcast audience, but Justin was getting the credit. There is no need for protecting the innocent with an alias in this section, so the listeners should get due recognition. Yours in sport, Jock, not Justin, Glover."
Meow.
Yes. Jock.
So
Jock's given me one of my favourite moments of the podcast to date, which is we've never seen a ptarmigan on skis, and I've thought about it a lot since.
No.
Yes. Well, I'm going to apologise unreservedly. Jock, you should have got your due recognition, and I apologise. And that is why Max is Max's real name from the submission above. And
I see. Yeah. Are you going to give Jock a sort of a consolatory prize?
Well, he's not only had the pleasure of having 2 emails read out on the podcast now, but he's also managed to embarrass me on the podcast too. So,
So no. Yeah, he's
no. That's it. He's almost had his garters revoked, to be completely honest.
Yeah. Do you think we should ask him to send them back?
They haven't been posted yet, so we can still do that.
Yeah.
Right. So Ponzi, Max, and now you, Oliver, are the newest members of the Most Noble Order of the Garters and will very soon be in receipt of a set of the much coveted Guns on Pegs podcast shooting sock garters.
Wonderful.
If you too have a shooting confession quandary or a query that you'd like us and our guests to help you with, or if you've got an unpopular opinion or you'd like to share your podcast selection and you would like a set of garters, drop us an email to pod@gunsonpegs.com. Now, Oliver, perhaps uncharitably, at the beginning of the show, Chris mentioned that people might find your books in the downstairs loo. And we tend to think of cartoons as being sort of throwaway humour, but that's maybe underplaying the rich history of cartoons a bit. And I think with some of your other work that you do with the Cartoons Museum, you sort of try and highlight the artistic and political merits of cartoons. Is that fair?
Yeah, it's totally fair. Firstly, I would be honoured to be in anyone's downstairs loo, either on a table next door to it, or hanging on a wall next door to it, because that's where people spend a lot of time. And, that's probably where my empire was built from. Many people have seen them in there. As a nation, it's an art form we're particularly good at. We started it back in, probably Hogarth is the grandfather of British cartooning, through the golden age of caricature, Rowlandson, Gilray, all that lot. And then we had Punch magazine. And then in the 20th century, obviously, Heath Robinson, Bateman, Giles, wonderful, wonderful cartoonists. If you look at Carl Giles, who drew for the Daily Express from 1940 to 1995, he will tell you, his cartoons will tell you more about what people really thought, what they wore, what they did, than you'll ever see in a book or in a newspaper. And even now, we have political cartoonists who are able to criticize our current leaders and our royal family, which they've done for many hundreds of years, in a way that they can say things that you could never write down in writing. So it's something we're very, very good at. It's a proud history. And yes, so I started a cartoon museum in 2006, and we've had 500,000 visitors. It's in Wells Street, just off Oxford Street. And we now have a collection of 6,500 cartoons and 18,000 books. And basically, it's a history of British cartooning. And it's a wonderful joy.
And what is it about cartoons specifically then that makes them so powerful, that makes them able to capture zeitgeist and so on in such a succinct way?
Well, when Prince Philip died, you get lots of sort of words written in the press, but sometimes the cartoon, I'm trying to sort of think of the good examples of what Peter Brooks did in the Times or Matt did in the Telegraph. Basically the cartoon says what everybody's feeling, and you don't need any writing. It's just, you could just see it in the picture. And so often with, Matt did a cartoon about the farming budget the other day. One day, my son, all this will belong to the HMRC. It is, it is. And I did one, I think, for the Field, which is, called Your Grace, and it was the chap saying to his son, "One day, all of this will belong to your elder brother." And I feel very strongly that cartooning is about good drawing and good jokes. And I'm not remotely political. I don't have an angry bone in my body. And lots of my friends who draw for The Guardian or the Times are political cartoonists, and they are quite angry. And it comes out in their drawings, whereas I just like making people laugh.
Are the cartoonists bound by the same editorial guidelines or rules? Or do they sort of get carte blanche? And
very, very rarely do they get hauled over the coals. I think Daumier, who was a cartoonist in France, was supposedly sent to prison for upsetting Louis the 15th, 16th, 17th, one of those. Back in the day, in 1795, 1815, Gilray was paid a pension to stop portraying George IV in any more immoral situations. I mean, George IV, when he lived at St James's Palace, and the print shop was where the Economist building was, next door to Boodle's. He would send up his lackeys to go, because they put all the prints in the windows, which was incredibly rude about him. And they would send his footmen up the street to go and buy every single one of them so that they didn't have any more to sell. Because there were no newspapers, there was no telly, there was no Sky TV. I mean, that was the only way you could see what the king looked like, was in these drawings. And you can't imagine Prince Charles doing that now. I don't particularly like the cartoon in today's Times, so I'll buy every single copy of the Times. But they are. It's a lovely thing to do, and it's particularly nice if we were to stand at the game fair or Burley or something, and people come on the card stand and they start giggling. And sometimes you get a lovely lady who is a complete giggler, and you hear screams of laughter coming from the card stand, and it's very flattering when it happens.
I did enjoy that exact moment when I was looking through some stuff before this, obviously. And there's so many that you remember that you've seen in places.
You're very kind.
And you're right about the downstairs loo. I think that's like the greatest honor, being on the wall of the downstairs loo.
Totally,
it doesn't get any better than that.
Yeah, totally. I mean, you wouldn't want to be hanging in a back room at the National Gallery. You'd far be better off in, lots of people's loos where they could. And, also they bought them because at the time it meant something to them, or somebody gave it to them because it was relevant to their friend or their sister.
The downstairs loo is what people really think about their life generally, rather than the sort of the sitting room, which maybe is this nice image of all these things which I would like to be.
Well, the sitting room is, look at these paintings that I bought, which I think are incredibly valuable and you should really admire them. Whereas the downstairs loo is lots of pictures of, this is me when I was captain of this team and I actually made it into this team or whatever. Or these are my friends and me shooting, or this is a fox's head that my great grandfather caught somewhere.
If I put it up high enough, it might make it look like it was mine.
Yeah, exactly. And then in between all of this, there might be a little table with a few Oliver Preston books on it, which would be great.
Yeah,
I guess the difference between what's hanging in the drawing room and what's hanging in the loo is that there is a realism to cartoons, isn't there? Even though they're stylized drawings, there's a sort of a true to lifeness of the concepts that are being portrayed, I suppose.
I mean, the trick is to get a joke which is timeless, that stands the test of time. And I did a shooting one, which is, it's the only way of getting the guns out again after lunch, with lots of bottles leaving the house. And as a trail for people to walk out on, but so much of cartooning is really ephemeral. It's just only relates to that particular period in time.
Yes, yeah, I suppose that's true. They're quite immediate, aren't they? A lot of the time, especially the political cartoons.
So I imagine all your cartoons then. The shoot days, given what you've done in the field. The shoot days are a huge source of inspiration.
Yeah, they are, but it's like everything. I do a lot of cartoons about Switzerland and skiing and, obviously shooting as well. And I must have covered shooting from every single angle you can possibly think of. And then, you see something else. I mean, I did one not long ago of a woman filming her husband shooting. And I think the caption was, video of my husband shooting a pheasant, take 23. Because it's sort of kind of updating.
Yeah, it's so true.
To what happens, everyone filming their husband or, whatever. But I also quite like animals. I love the way, dogs obviously talk to us when we're shooting.
Yeah.
And they look at us and they say, why couldn't I go and pick that bird up? Because... why did you let the guy next door's dog do that? I mean, that's just, why couldn't I do that? Or picking up the bird in a lake and the dog looking at the owner going, if it's that important to you, why don't you pick it up yourself?
So do you start with the caption? Do you start with the gag and then draw the image that feels right with it? Or is it?
I almost always start with the caption. And then I do the drawing, and it's a nightmare for my wife because quite often I will think of an idea in the middle of the night.
Yeah,
and then you have this scrabbling around trying to find a piece of paper or anything you can write on, and then I knock the water over and it spills, and then the lamp goes over, and then you have to write it down when you think of it because in the morning you go, what was that brilliant idea I had in the middle of the night, and you can't remember it,
and it's never as good.
And it's never as good. And then the other one is I drive up and down the M4 to London, and you conceive this brilliant idea between Reading and Wokingham, and then you can't write it down because you're in a car, so you have to ring yourself at home in the studio and leave a message, or I ring my wife and say, "Could you write this down, please?" It's quite quite sad.
Do you know what's interesting about that? That says you're very comfortable at driving, because these ideas come in your relaxed state, don't they? They come when your heart and your mind is in its most relaxed state, which obviously is when you're asleep. But it clearly means you're very chilled on the M4, which is a lot of people. That's not
or slightly worrying. The fact that I couldn't remember any of the journey between Swindon and Wokingham because I was thinking of cartoon ideas.
And your foot's gone flat on the floor and you're doing about 90, 100 by the time you...
All of that. But I think the other thing is that when you draw them, you do the picture and then you finish it and then you start fiddling with the caption.
Yes.
So you start changing it. And then, I used to show them to my dad, who was great. And I showed them to my wife and she goes, "It's not funny." And I go, "What do you mean it's not funny?" "Of course it's funny." And she says, "Well, it'd be much better if you had the caption as this." And I go, "No, it wouldn't." And then I changed the caption to something else. And I go, "That's just not remotely funny anymore," And so, 9 times out of 10, the first idea that you had is the right one.
Yeah. So hold on. Is your wife your biggest fan?
I think she adores me and my cartoons to bits. Is she my biggest fan? I think probably she is just gorgeous and lovely and probably fed up with cartoons. I don't want to hear another word about cartoons. She very cleverly, she runs the publishing side of my business, my empire.
Okay.
So she is the brains behind the operation. I'm just the organ grinder or the monkey. Maybe.
That's a cool combo.
Yeah. Well, actually, we both came from London. She put up the satellites for BBC News 24 and Al Jazeera and all sorts of things and gave up doing that. And I worked at Lehman Brothers selling bonds and gave up doing that. And we met and I became a cartoonist and she was doing up properties. And we met in the middle of the night and moved and got married and had kids and came down to the Cotswolds.
Oh, nice. Selling bonds at Lehman Brothers is about the least creative role from a sort of using your creative mindset, surely.
Yeah, but I quite enjoyed it. And I was very keen to know what gilts were and money supply. I don't know why. It was a sad day, but I did it for 10 years, worked in the city, and I'm really glad I did. And I loved it, really loved it. But they were trying to make me sell mortgage-backed securities, and I didn't really understand them.
And that's when they did get a bit too creative, really.
Yes,
and no one else did either.
They got very, very creative. Well, also, all the people that started... I was a director, which meant I was a senior bond salesman, and we used to have to interview people. And after a while, none of the people that we were interviewing were actually... sort of doing degrees that I would call relevant. They were all doing engineering degrees or physics degrees, and they were much, much cleverer than me, which is when I thought it was time to leave.
Fair enough.
I was going to say that a lot of your work in the shooting world has been in collaboration with other people as well. I'm thinking of a book I've got behind me, which is this one. Which is Rosie Nickerson's How to Be Asked Again. What's it like illustrating other people's work? Do you work with them from the beginning of the process, or do you end up with a copy of the manuscript and then work out which bits you want to illustrate, get inspiration from there? Or is it
You've kind of picked the two wrong books, actually, because Rosie, whose father was the legendary Joe Nickerson, has written a lovely book about how you shoot, essentially. And The Imperfect Shot is largely about funny shooting stories. So all we actually did was to put any cartoon I had from the Field magazine about shooting into the books.
Right.
To add some spice to it. So none of the cartoons are actually about the book. Whereas I did do a book about port called Real Men Drink Port, and I had to illustrate the actual text in the book. And to answer your question, it's not easy working with authors, because especially first-timers, because they always think that their book is going to be the next Jilly Cooper's Rivals or, Frederick Forsyth, Day of the Jackal. And of course, 9 times out of 10, it's a shooting book or a skiing book, and it's a rather limited market. So, and the other, I've done 3 books of limericks, and that was a nightmare because the people who wrote the limericks, sometimes the limericks don't rhyme. And I would say, I think you find it might be better if we change line 3 and put in forceful at the end rather than something else. And they go, well, are you trying to tell me that my poems don't rhyme? And you have to go, well, no, it doesn't actually rhyme. But anyway.
How to Be Asked Again, though, is one of those. I mean, you're right. Obviously, it's the shooting world. It's pretty small in the grand scheme of things. But was it not surprisingly successful?
I think it probably is. I mean, I think, and we sell. I'm looking at the cover drawing is just here on the wall next door to me. We sell a lot of them, and I'm amazed that there's. I shouldn't be saying this. I'm amazed that there's not a Lou in England that hasn't got a copy of it.
Yeah.
In it.
Do you know what I thought about it? That makes it so saleable is that. If you're a father and now being a father to two very young children, I'm imagining this point of when you get to the sort of the thing we talked about right at the top, which is, the sort of teenager getting onto the peg. Yeah. And it's a rubbish conversation to be very preachy and talking about this is how you do it. Whereas if it can be portrayed in a sort of slightly more humorous fashion and more enjoyable fashion, you can pass the buck to a book which they look up to and then have more respect for. So the whole job goes better.
Absolutely. And of course, where it works really well is that Rosie is A, a very good shot, B, has written it very well, and it is a lovely book about how you shoot and what you do and how you tip and, how you behave and all the rest of it. But it's got a bit more than that. So it's not just a book for a beginner, whereas The Imperfect Shot is very much lots of lovely, funny shooting stories written by a gamekeeper. And they work pretty well together. And then I do skiing books and other things, which sit in chalets loos in the Alps.
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
But they're obviously very closely observed as well. So, and Chris sort of alluded to it, and you talked about it a bit with your, sudden inspiration in the evenings and so on. But is it just sheer immersion in the shooting world or whichever world it is you happen to be working on at the time? Is it just sheer immersion, or do you spend your time on shoot days going, oh, I must remember that keeper's face so that I can use it?
I don't do that, but I do. I'm exceptionally annoying. My Vivian, my wife, we will come back from a dinner party, and I can tell you what every single person at the dinner was wearing.
Interesting.
Particularly women. And if they're wearing something particularly interesting, then it will reappear in a cartoon. Because I go, well, that's a really cool top. I could put that in a drawing. And people, I think possibly I'm influenced by H.M. Bateman and Thelwell and Asterix and Tintin and and there are certain people that appear in my cartoons again and again. I don't know why, but they just do. I mean, I can already see George with his moustache. he will be appearing in one of my, cartoons coming up soon.
Oh, you would have completed life, George.
I will have done. Yes, I'll be pulling a George IV if that happens.
But I've clocked his. You see, with George, I've clocked his black and white check shirt and the room that he's in and everything. Where with Chris, he's just wearing a grey t-shirt, and it is quite sort of. There's nothing to take away.
No, and I've got a duvet behind me to make this sound better.
Oh, is it? Oh, right. I thought it was a soundproofing room or something.
Yeah, we don't let him out.
But no, so I do clock a lot of things, and Viv goes, I can't believe you know what they were wearing, or jewelry. Another thing I look at, I and what hand people wear watches on, but people, what colour shooting socks they're wearing. And sometimes they're a bit too much.
So you now need to get the pink garters into some of your cartoons.
Now.
I will.
Pink garters. You'll obviously get a pair in the post, but then you know what we're talking about. That would be fun.
I would love a pair in the post. I have many pairs of garters which I enjoy wearing. And I also have a shooting suit. Which I had made when I was much, much thinner. And I can now just about get into again. But I do quite enjoy wearing a pair of +4s with a matching jacket at breakfast, which I then take off and put on my...
very smart.
Yeah, lovely.
Yeah. These garters are funny things because you'll turn up somewhere and someone will go, hold on, and they'll recognise them. and they obviously no other thing that you wear shooting has got such a story, because everyone wants to know what was your name.
Such a cachet.
Yeah, what was your name on the podcast? What was it you got mentioned for? Tell me the story or something like that. And it's
really,
yeah, it's good. It's quite funny. You mentioned shooting excuses already. This podcast gets listened to by people, especially on the way to shoot days. You know, getting revved up, getting in the mindset for shooting.
Okay,
go on. They're going to need your help. So picture them on the first drive, having had a shocker. A few little tidbits to help them with a few of their favourites after that first drive.
Lord, well, it's always tricky. I don't understand why when you're shooting that the easy birds are always the ones that you miss. Is that just me? You get things that fly straight over your head, and you might get this sort of satellite bird that comes over and it picks up from about a mile away, and all the beaters start cheering and whatever, and it goes higher and higher, and then you hit that one, but you miss the ones down the bottom. I don't know.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not sure I'm very good at helping somebody who's all nervous and a twitter at the first drive. I think what they need is a glass of Williamine, or some old peculiar spirit, and just get on with it. I mean, I do have a problem grouse shooting because I don't do enough of it. I think you've got to do a lot of grouse shooting to be good at it.
Yeah.
And the idea of shooting them under the bird, shooting at their legs, it just doesn't fall naturally to me. And I get crosser and crosser and crosser as I miss more and more and more of them. And you just got to stop getting cross and just calm down.
I think calmness is a big thing. I do have words of comfort for people who miss the easy ones, which is nobody cares if you miss the easy ones. Nobody's taking note of the easy ones that you do shoot. They're only noticing the really good ones, and so nobody really minds. Nobody's going to.
And we don't like seeing a bird pillowcased anyway.
Yeah. George, the bit of a late night excuse is your go-to.
I don't think I've ever used it as an excuse.
Yeah.
This is that cartoon of the guy with the chin on the peg, on the V of the thumbstick.
Yeah.
That's you, George, after the first drive on one of our days.
Probably.
I did shoot partridge in Spain, and we stayed up every night till. I mean, they didn't start dinner till 12 o'clock. And you went to bed at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock, and then they all sort of start off. And then between every drive, there's tapas and the other thing is that my host, I had to borrow some guns because I was actually in Switzerland and I went to Spain. And I said, presumably it's a double gun day. And he said, double gun? I'm shooting with 8.
8?
8. They had sort of racks of guns, because the guns got so hot.
Blimey.
Which was something else.
Gosh, that's quite something, isn't it?
I've stunned you into silence.
You have. I had a really very witty and clever question to ask you, and it's completely vanished from my head.
Must have been that witty.
And you've forgotten it already.
I'll blame the slow gin that I've just finished, since I'm using booze as an excuse.
Have you had that whole bottle?
Well, it was only a little one.
It was only 5. He put it really close to the camera.
There you go. It's hand-sized.
I've had about a fifth of this bottle, and I think I might stop.
Well, that is probably a good moment then to move on to the final segment of the podcast, which is one that we call Desert Island Shooting. And the conceit is this. The extinction level event asteroid hits tomorrow. Your affairs are in order, your loved ones and enemies are reconciled, the dogs are fed and the tomatoes are watered. Your last day begins how?
I think that I've done lots of shooting in weird places, up in Wales at Llanalman, and I've actually shot down in Devon on an estuary where I'd been standing on a punt in the middle of a river, and we got delivered onto there were 8 punts with rock salt in them so we didn't fall over, and we had to eject the cartridges into the punt, not into the river. But I would love to relive a couple of my cartoons. One is I'd like to... I did a cartoon of St. James's with all the guns lined out from the top of Piccadilly down towards St James's Palace, and the birds are flying over the top. And I think it would be lovely to have a drive where you're standing on St James's, and the birds would probably fly from St James's Square towards Hyde Park.
Yep.
And then, of course, you could go and have lunch in Boodles or Brooks's or White's or Levens's in one of them, and you could, you wouldn't have to carry a big bag of cartridges because you could just pop into William Evans and restock in between drives. And you could always try out another pair of guns from Beretta, which is just up the road. Or
you got 2 gun shops. Yeah, right.
There's a lot of opportunities there. And then I think probably lunch would be in I don't know, probably not White's.
The pick of London restaurants. I mean,
yeah. I think I'd probably go to Wilton's actually.
Lovely,
because I draw cartoons to them, and it is the best restaurant in the area. And then after that, we'd have to take a helicopter from St James's Square down to Biggin Hill, right? Catch a private jet to Switzerland, and then we'd have a couple of drives off a mountain in Switzerland.
Nice.
Because I think in the snow.
Yeah.
And I think you probably have the mountains. I mean, they'd have to plant some game crops on the mountains and probably have some pheasants, or probably more of a pheasant shoot than a partridge shoot. So. But the birds would be super, super high.
Have you got a mountain in mind?
Lot of mountains. It would be in Gstaad because that's where we go. So it would either be on the Egli or the probably the Vishplan, because there's not too much skiing on the Vishplan.
Are you holding pheasants in cover on the side of that mountain? Okay.
Well, it doesn't really matter because there aren't many other shoots around, so nobody's going to be pinching your birds. But I think the thing is that the birds would be particularly high, which we'd like, and after. It's this is the afternoon, so it's going to get dark quite early as well because it's winter, and I think the season would probably end at the beginning of February, like normal. So after it's all finished, you could then go to a restaurant where you could have some fondue or some Wilhelmine schnapps.
Yes,
probably
perfect.
Which would finish the day off rather nicely. Then some raclette. Then you could go night clubbing and all the rest, and see all your friends. And you might have to have a 20 gun day rather than a 6 gun day. Because you wouldn't be able to cover the base of the mountain.
Yes.
And the dogs picking up would be St Bernards, not Labradors.
Yeah. I love that.
And so I think, day shooting in St James's and then the afternoon on a ski slope is pretty good.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's unusual.
Very unusual.
I don't think it's been done before.
No. Do you think it's got legs?
So that picture of the guns lined up St James's got a lot of airtime in our office because our office was above Wilton's.
Oh, was it?
For many years.
Did you get cheap lunches at Wilton's?
No, so we called Franco's the company canteen.
Oh, yeah. We like Franco's. Yeah, very good.
Owned by the same lot.
Well, I think Franco's is probably where you'd meet the guns would meet before the first drive.
That's a good point. You could sit outside nicely, couldn't you?
Yeah, so they could all sit outside having sloe gin, schnapses and all sorts of things and smoking cigars and what have you. And then you literally walk down into Jermyn Street and the guns would number from the top down to St James's. So number 1 would be up on Piccadilly and number 8 would be down, and
you're holding the birds in St James's in St James's Square, and they would fly very nicely to the open cover in Green Park. That would be perfect.
Yeah, and you could probably have a duck drive as well.
I was just thinking you could probably have a good duck drive
in St James's Park.
Yes,
and some, on a serious note, pigeon shooting in Trafalgar Square.
On a serious note, and I'll dig the photo out and email it to you. I remember a friend sending me a picture of a red leg partridge in St James's Square. No word of a lie.
Well, I'm amazed.
Right? Yeah. Lost, surely. Like, I don't know how. It feels like someone's put it there.
Maybe it was going to lunch at Wilton's in more ways than one.
So yeah, that's.
I really like that. It's one of my favourites for a long time. That one, and it'll definitely keep the spreadsheet keepers happy. We have a trio of listeners who keep a running record of all the desert island shooting and the drinks, and this is an episode to keep them all very happy.
Well, you're very, very kind, and I hope that I hope that we're up to the mark.
We certainly are. In fact, it's been great.
Well, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, and good luck with the podcast.
Thank you very much.
And I will listen and try and think of some intelligent suggestions for some of the madder things that you seem to have come up with. But George is obviously on top of the subject, I think.
Always.
Ooh. I've just seen The Jam playing in Bath, and that's now my ringtone, going underground.
Well, on that note, before we go, all that remains for me to say is that there's a final reminder that you can get your hands on a pair of the very exclusive Guns on Pegs podcast shooting sock garters by sending us your shooting dilemmas for us to resolve, or by sharing your unpopular opinions, or letting us know about forgotten drives or drives with exciting or funny names, or by sharing your podcast itineraries. Just drop us an email to pod@gunsonpegs.com, and if we read it out in the next episode or any future episodes, we will send you some garters. We'll be back in a couple of weeks' time, but until then, thanks very much for listening, and goodbye.